Welcome to HumBot. In HumBot, we talk about application of AI agents in business environments. Today, we are at an inflection point as organizations move away from the land of pilots to the land of demanding agentic outcomes. What that means is the surface area expands. We're looking at new decisions from leaders to be made. Decisions around control, decisions around security, decisions around earning end user trust. The land of heterogeneous tools and pilots is far away and behind us. Today, we are talking about what does the future look like. And as a first, we have the first two repeat guests in our pod today. And it is my great pleasure to welcome Craig and Sokratis. Craig, Sokratis, welcome back to the HumBot Podcast. Maybe you've done your intros before, the community knows you, but is there anything that's changed in how you're approaching the agentic AI world? Let's start with that, either of you.
Yeah, sure thing. And I think so. I mean, look, I think last time we spoke was a year ago, right? Yeah. My focus is still on agentic scale and looking at how we can help our customers globally to drive on that. What's changed? You said it earlier. We've pushed away from the POC proliferation stage to driving scale in production to delivering on proper business value. Business value has also matured to not just showing value, but showing total cost of ownership as well, and efficiency in how we use AI. We've shifted away from thinking about use cases to thinking about workflows. How are we actually identifying business workflows end to end rather than spot point use cases? We've continued to mature in our thinking that this is much bigger than a technology change, right? This is people, process, culture, and tech and data. And then the final thing is we have seen that this is a proliferation of agents in a heterogeneous way. All of SaaS is becoming agentified. So I'm now seeing there is a two-way effect. When we used to build machine learning, when we used to build analytics in the past, it was about a central team building products to deploy to the business. Now it's bi-directional. That still exists. We'll build custom agents and deploy. But we also have SaaS agents being configured in all SaaS applications by the business. And the question then is, how do you control all of that, which is coming into you as well as coming out, right? So there's this proliferation in a heterogeneous way, and how do you control and orchestrate all of that?
And how you keep the quality at a certain level, right? Because to have business people delivering something without anything in the middle, it is a little bit scary.
Right.
And from my side, Sokratis Kartakis, similarly with Greg, we met last year. I'm a Gen AI black belt for Google. I'm extremely technical, as you can imagine. I'm close to the product team. I'm close to the top customers of Google. I know what will come next before it comes to the market. I'm extremely excited for that. All the scenarios that Greg mentioned is what we help our customers to achieve. And also, we help the product team to simplify the life of the customers to achieve that. And we can talk further about all the technical aspects of this in order to make it happen.
Yeah, so let's just go into that, Sokratis. If we are looking at a world where we're moving from single agent applications to orchestrated multi-agent applications, what are your initial views on the attack surface when it comes to security, as example?
Very good point. Security is one of the biggest domains in the market right now around agents. They are trying to understand how to resolve that. It is an open issue. At some point, I remember some experts in the field to say, after, for example, Anthropic lost their source code in the internet, whatever, everything has changed. We have new vulnerabilities. We cannot go out and give prescriptive guidance to our customers. In my view, is always we will have new vulnerabilities, but at least we need to have some view how to resolve them. Now, how many technical people they use to resolve them? They use the pattern as Wiz, for example. We have the red, blue, green teams. They try to simulate attackers with agents in order to, be prepared of what is happening. Then they have the blue, green that is like the observers of these attacks, and they have then the green team that is the fixers of these attacks. So imagine now, in order to resolve all these security issues, they start creating background ubiquitous agents to start observing everything, and not only observing, but fixing on the fly. That means that you need always to have humans in the loop, because you need to observe all these issues that they went through, and also the fix. Somebody needs to say, yes, this is a valid fix or not a valid fix, even from a business perspective. And this is where we link the two worlds of technology and business as well, because some decision that a model might take might not be aligned with the cost of the company or other other topics that nobody has instructed the model to follow, right?
Right. I mean, I fully agree. And I think the other thing here, which I hear more as a narrative nowadays as well, is there's two waves of abundance that are starting to come right now. The first has been with software engineering and the agentification. So we're going to see an abundance of software. Now we're into the security world as well. And there is the next wave is an abundance of highly secure software, because the last half a century of coding has been by humans. And a lot of that has been imperfect. A lot of it has left loopholes.
Yes.
Yep.
Now we're entering this era where actually we have these very powerful models that will be able to not only write very great code at high volume, but also highly secure software. So like I take a bullish approach to this one. I think we're entering into an age of abundance where we'll have a proliferation of not just software, but a proliferation of highly secure software, hopefully as well. And we'll need it because there will be more vectors of attack. There will be more threats as well. Right.
Yes.
So,
but again, you need to instruct the model to write the secure code, right? And also every company needs to set their own standards. Their own, because different companies, they have different security needs, different levels of security. I know in financial sector, right, they have different tiers of use cases, tier 1 to tier 4, depending on the criticality of the data that you have. So we need the experts to set all these standards of security depending on the level of security that you want to achieve.
Yeah, indeed. And clearly, I'm hearing a lot of role for humans to be experts or orchestrators of this change. Craig, like traditionally, so we talked about security. This is one part of a transformation journey, and humans were allocated for units of time as a variable to orchestrate this change. So effectively, when an organization planned for any transformation, they planned for X number of hours of Y number of human expertise, correct? And that will be kind of their planning. In this agentic world, when you're planning transformations around agentification, what are the units that you plan your transformations against?
Yeah. So I think this pattern is clear, right? The unit is value, right? Value of outcome. And what we've seen over the last couple of years is a divorcing of time and effort equaling value, right? That's no longer an equation that holds true, because what we're seeing is there's so much more ability to 10x, 50x your output if you are also working in a hybrid way with cohorts of agents alongside humans, right? So velocity of value, velocity of outcomes is the metric. The other thing as well is, again, in the past, I think we need to think differently. Let's look at a contact center for customer service, for example. There's always been this dynamic of, do we optimize for volumes of calls we can respond to, or value of conversation and quality? And it's always been an or. Now it's an and. We can do both volume and value and quality, right? Because we have the ability to. We can have agents maximize on how we drive volume, and we can still have humans where we want to add real quality of conversation. It's the same with coding. We've had this bottleneck in any organization the world over the last couple of decades where people just couldn't get enough software engineers through the door. They couldn't write enough. They could never clear their backlogs. That's gone now. If you start to use agents in software, you can do velocity of driving out all of your software as well as high quality rigor and security. So I again, I'm bullish on this. I think we're seeing a place where the pie gets bigger rather than it being fixed, where the equation changes and it's about outcomes, how we deliver on proper impact into the business. But it's not an or equation, it's an and equation.
Interesting. And maybe for me, what I capture from that is this: the contract between an employee and an employer is traditionally been an employee invests certain hours of time and brings expertise for the employer's gains. Probably that's changing to a world where the employee is committing to outcome delivery or at a velocity, which the employer then helps drive by the employee. So it's kind of important and this probably goes for partnerships beyond in-house hiring to all the contractor relationships and subcontractors that you hire, which is very interesting. Anything from you to add on this?
For sure, yes. One thing that came to my mind is in order to come to this quality volume, let's say, I always think that the engineers who are using all these agents and everything, they need to know the foundations as well.
Yes.
We cannot forget about this, right? I don't really like people that they deliver something doing vibe coding without knowing what they're doing.
Yes.
And then the quality is extremely low. And I want to give you an example of what I propose to different teams to start as an interview process. Instead of having code interviews for software engineers, I suggest that we need to have not only vibe coding interviews, but coding and vibe coding interviews. The coding interview gives you to understand that this person knows the fundamentals, right?
Yes.
And to understand everything. The vibe coding gives you to understand that this person knows how to use the recent tools that are available to achieve the scaling.
I think that's really interesting. I think you're right. And there is this dynamic of like hard and seasoned experience.
Yes.
And then ability to use AI to 10x that experience as well.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Just one more thought as well. When we think about these outcomes as well, I think we also need to look at two dimensions to this. One is it's not just, I'll take an example maybe in supply chain. If I'm working in a demand forecasting function, yes, I want to drive outcomes for better accurate forecasting, but I need to think about the overall outcome for the supply chain, because the risk is I drive a higher velocity of accurate forecasts that create a bottleneck in procurement, right? And so this is, I think one of the things we're seeing with AI and Agentic is we can't think in our siloed teams. We have to think more laterally about how this unlocks value without creating bottlenecks. So there's something about how we think about outcomes in a different way there. The second thing, and I think this is connected to your point of, we have to have standardization and foundations of best practice.
Yeah.
And that's, important because it's not just delivering a valuable outcome once, it's delivering it many times at scale. And to do that, you need to have the right foundations that create economies of scale as well, right? Using the same tools, the same platforms, using the same control planes.
Yes.
Because if everybody is doing that every single time in different technology, the total cost of ownership is very high, right?
100%. And we cannot remember that we need to maintain and optimize continuously all these standards, right? Because we know every 3 months we have something new arriving.
Right.
So it is not like a one-off effort that you need to spend now and later or forget about this. You need every 3 months to reconsider what you have done, how you have done, and see if you can optimize with a new toy in the market.
Indeed. Things are changing. And I think I'm already capturing some details around this control plane element of orchestrating this change, and decisions probably need to happen on this control plane layer today, as opposed to a single model choice or a single tool choice, because I think we are way past that largely in front as to where it's going. In terms of your experience, Sokratis, so this control plane, let's imagine this becomes the orchestrator from single agent use to workflows that rely on multi-agent use, including agent handoffs and whatnot. What would be 2-3 standards that you would recommend for leaders to consider when planning for such a control plane?
Many different aspects here. Now you mentioned that we have all these models out there, right, in the market. First of all, you need to have the ability to run all these models and to pick and choose whatever is best for you. So somehow they need to standardize the way that they interact with this model and how they switch from one model to another smoothly without having issues with their quality. This is something that they need to standardize, how you evaluate everything, how you make sure that it works. Second is, as we move along, the key point for a business is the cost, right? So most probably they want to change also models to reduce their costs.
Yes.
In that case, what is the impact of choosing a lower model, right? With less capabilities, less reasoning, but lower cost in order to achieve the same. So you need to set also the economics or the FinOps, if I may say, with a way to balance everything. Then, of course, you need to, in vibe coding area, for example, right? We move from vibe coding to agentic engineering, as we say. Agentic engineering is a way to standardize how you move to production. All the different steps you need to standardize. For example, how you do testing, how you do evaluation, how to perform other simulation things. So you need to have a dedicated team to standardize all these steps for a business, and then to do an integration test, if I may say, because even if you have optimized each single step, this does not mean that it works end to end. So the next step is to also have a standard integration test and to keep both business and technical people happy. That is very, very difficult. So as a summary, right? You need to have standardized the evaluation, standardize the process to production by standardizing all the sub parts, but also the complete end-to-end, and standardize your economics, your alerts, your way to understand what is going on, the observability part that is huge in order to be able to optimize continuously your approach.
Indeed.
Of course, these are just some thoughts on top of the mind, right?
I really agree, and maybe help. So I've been using this analogy a bit. It's imperfect, but it's probably a fit until it's not a fit. But I think when we think about control planes, it's almost like the equivalent of how we think about human resource management, but it's AI resource management as well. And so, like, what I mean is, we need a common plane where we can keep a track of all of this AI that's deployed into our business, that we can use to train, to deploy, to performance manage, right? So, like, are they staying within the evals? Are they breaching guardrails, etc.? And this is where it breaks with the human analogy, to upgrade. If something like the AUA, the European AI regulation changes, like, can we upgrade at once uniformly, and then retire out the business as well when we need to as well to replace. So I think that kind of like helps me when I think about this control plane a bit as well.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So I captured a lot of interesting points here, starting from the role of what is called now tokenomics, or probably that's the word. Like, how do you manage tokens? I think having the ability to route tokens to the underlying tool set, which could be any in a heterogeneous set of choices, is probably one key decision. So the decision should not be within one specific tool or a platform. It should be at an org level. The organizational role should decide where to route for what. And then you talked about many more elements that I see as additional human investments, just that they come with different KPIs of measurement. So in future, if you are looking at, let's say, 100,000 agents running in a large organization, of course, managed and deployed by a central team with foundations, how do we see the role of experts then around it? What kind of measurements are we ascribing to those human experts? And what kind of career paths do we see for existing experts who probably think there is no future for them? But probably based on what I'm hearing, I'm already hearing multiple new job roles coming up. So any thoughts on what are these new job roles in a world where you're managing such a control plane at an org level?
So I have less thoughts about new job roles because it's hard to guess, right? But I have more thoughts about new attributes within roles. And I think for me, the obvious one is we have this inversion that's happening across organizations, where today the typical split is 80% of an organization is doing, 20% is directing. That's going to invert. It's going to be 80% directing cohorts of agents, 20% doing. And so that's an attribute that all people need to think differently about. How do I shift to a mindset of not just doing, but directing, right? On my behalf. We will all be managers in the future. We will all be directors. The second is, we were talking a little bit about this earlier when it comes to software engineering, but it applies to any domain. Critical thinking. Like that's going to be really important, because we still need to be able to have the overall judgment, the overall sense. The world is a messy place. Decisions are not always clean, to help to orchestrate these cohorts of agents in any role as well. And then the final thing I'll say is that I think, there's two dimensions. People are tempted to say, oh, the world is becoming agentified. I must become an AI expert. Yes, we need AI experts. We need a ton of them, but also we need specialists in every domain, whether you're in marketing, fraud, supply chain, R&D, anything in between, to think about how you're a specialist that can use AI to 10x what you're doing in that role as well. So I think a lot of those roles persist. They just become a lot more directive, a lot more judgmental from a critical thinking from humans. And then, you're able to use AI to 10x the specialization of your particular role as well.
Yeah.
I totally agree, and we haven't reached yet the level that a model can generate new knowledge, right? Probably in the future, in 10 years, this might happen. Right now, all this knowledge that the agents use comes from humans. you need to instruct how an agent will work, right? You need SMEs to know how to instruct those with the right way. You need SMEs to create this context that an agent requires in order to be precise with your own business workflows and processes and products as well. So for me, SMEs, we are moving from a place that we don't have now people that they do just as I told you earlier, right? They have a stamp and they put it on the paper. They need to use their knowledge to do something meaningful. So I suggest all the people, they need to specialize on something specific, in a specific vertical, let's say, have deep knowledge, and then use AI as an assistant in order to achieve more.
Indeed. And that brings Craig's point of being managers of agents. You need to own and manage them, not just create, but also manage.
And guess what's coming? An entire generation who does this natively out of university. And they're going to disrupt a lot of us in the current workplace if we don't also drive that adoption. Because just like, when I came out of university, I was looking for a company where I'd have an internet connection. We're going to have these university students coming out. They will be looking for the companies that are AI native, that come with AI tools. They will probably come and say, I'm waiting for the time where a new entrant into an organization is going to say, can I bring my 5 or 10 agents with me as part of my employment contract because they help to work with me? So they're going to drive this change in roles, this change in culture as this new generation comes through.
But we need to change the education in the universities as well, right? Now they need to stop doing the classic assessments, the classic exercises, whatever. They need to start, using all these agents and everything, be native, and focus also how they assess the students with a completely different way. Probably creativity might be one, right? Because you have the tools, they can produce whatever you want. Are you creative? Are you innovative? Do you create something new that does not exist? So probably we need to start thinking around this in the university side as well.
I really agree. Yeah. Innovative and efficient in how you're innovative as well.
Exactly.
And I was thinking of 2-3 examples that's closer to home in HumBot, but also in our customer base. So maybe 2 short examples is we had someone hired from university who we got in, trained him on DevOps as a skill set over 6 months. But others in my team who are experienced data engineers and machine learning engineers have built agents of theirs and curated it for all their skills and years of knowledge. Without those experts in the room, this new AI native colleague of ours who has just come out from university is talking to their agents on a daily basis, learning from what the kind of code they've developed and incorporating all that in how he's delivering. So what we realized was we don't need to tag him as DevOps now. He can do DevOps, he can do data, he can do machine learning because he's kind of mastered this art of working with other person's agents, which is a representation of others' skill sets.
Yeah.
So I think that's to your point on the natives who will come out, who will have absolutely no biases like all of us with a bit more tenure. And they just want to learn. The other example is just my EA. So my EA had an EA role, but now the new responsibilities are working with an agent to drive all the social marketing, working with agents to drive invoicing for us, plus onboarding of new colleagues, again, helped by a specialist agent that my other parts of my team have built, but they've extended to her.
Yeah.
She's now a consumer of these agents and then interacting with the team. So I'm seeing these examples closer to home.
That's really interesting because the other thing you mentioned there, Sanjeev, is that, we will have these agents or these skill files, maybe, that are shared and jointly owned by teams rather than being unique just to an individual. It made me think about an organization that I've been speaking with recently that does very long-term manufacturing of large aerospace equipment. And their cycle for deploying new versions of what they build typically every 20 years. And their issue is by the time they come to create a new version, all of their engineers are ready to retire. And so the question is how do we create a persistent corporate memory using agents that can help to drive this tide of actually quite a slow rotating version control, right? And so there's this idea of persistent corporate memory or shared memory and knowledge that can be leveraged by many as well, I think that.
For sure. And we are moving also to a way that now the handover is not anymore a problem, or the legacy. in the past, we used to have legacy systems, right? And we used to have single point of failure. One person knew everything. And you
used to rely bank, and there's a few people holding it to ransom.
Exactly. Now this is not the case, right? You can have an agent assess what is happening, what is the structure of this, what is the architecture, how we can maintain, how we can update, how we can migrate to the new era, right? And you now start removing all this hassle and all this single point of failures, as I said, and this is extremely important for a business.
Yeah. It's so I think that's where the excitement is. You're seeing these net new consumers of agents who kind of adopt these amazing things. And agents could be skill representations, they could be code bases. It can exist in any format. But then those consumers think of net new experiences to uplift themselves. So at least we understand what could be potential outcomes when a enterprise grade control plane is operational. But Sokratis, let's break this down. So in the API world, we had API control planes. In the data world, we had the data control planes. Is this agentic control plane a different layer altogether in the stack? Or is it to be subsumed with previous investments?
Well, generally, in my opinion, right, agentic needs to be treated separately as well. Everything should be treated as a whole, right? Because you need a nice orchestration across everything. But because agentic world has some quite specific needs, right? You need also to deep dive on those. You cannot treat that, as all the other planes, in my opinion. You mentioned earlier, for example, skills, right? This might be part of data as well, if you think about this. But skills is something around humans, experts writing a manual that the model will read and reply with the right way, right? So how do you set guardrails there? Or, for example, security that we mentioned earlier, right? Do you know that through skills you can pass also prompt injection and start doing malicious things? So how do you control this?
Correct.
You need also to build something specific on the control plane around only security of that. We can talk about security the whole day. We're writing now 5 different white papers just for security, going through all the different layers, from networking to identification to XYZ. We need to treat also an agent like a user, right? Now the agents, they start acting on your behalf, right? How do you trace all the actions?
True.
Who is responsible and accountable for an action that an agent has taken? How do you assess an action? How do you really manage a failure if you want as well?
Yeah.
So it is a huge domain that needs to be separate, but to work nicely and smoothly with all the other layers that you mentioned.
I really agree. Add a couple of thoughts onto this. So the one is, you mentioned data control plane definitely needs to be separate, because for everything you've just said, an agentic control plane has a very different set of functions. Also, agents, when I think about a data control plane, the future of that is a semantic layer, right? Which enables data to be unlocked as a product for both agent and human use. And there's a many-to-many relationship between an agentic control plane and a semantic layer for data, because many agents need to use many different data to execute different activity. So there's 2 horizontal components here: data semantic layer, AI or agentic control plane, and then there's also orchestration, right? Which is orchestration between agents, and humans, etc. So those are 3 layers. The last thing I'll say here as well is, and I might be wrong, but technology in the history has shown us that centralization is a very difficult thing to do in absolute. So there might be a nuance here. When we think about an AI control plane, it might be in concept, in principles, in methods and frameworks, but it might be that there are multiple control planes that all have the same uniform principles adopted in different parts of a business. Business is complex. If I create a control plane in the Middle East versus a control plane in America for a big multinational consumer goods company, it's going to have to operate to a few sets of different regulations. So we might see this, do you know what I mean? This almost like conceptually standardized, but technically deployed in a number of different ways as a control plane. And we've seen that in the past. Look at data catalogs. Did any organization ever manage to create a single data catalog? Not that I've seen, unless they were small.
Yes.
But if you're looking at multinational complex businesses, we often ended up talking about catalogs of catalogs. Control planes might go the same way. I might be wrong, but I think they will.
It might, and you raised a very important point about metadata of the data, right? I see nowadays all the different companies, they build on top of their data, metadata, in order to be able, the agents to be able to understand what is the context of all this data, right?
Correct.
I used to say to my customers, like an agent is a graduate student that knows how to write amazing code, knows how to ping the databases, knows everything, but they don't know your business.
No.
So if you don't have this metadata layer, then you have nothing. You cannot agentify your business. In that case, probably the control planes that we have, they need to have a clear standard interface between the two.
Yes.
And this is what we need to define in the market. It is not defined yet, and not all the people, they know how to build that.
And we've seen this coming with like MCP protocols where you could wrap as a tool, but it's not fully there yet, right? Around data. Because the other key part of that, you've mentioned this a few times, is security integration. Because an agent shouldn't just be able to source and access any data set at any time, read or write to it. And that's another function of the control plane, is assigning the rights of agents to see what, not just data, but tools they can access to as well.
Yes, and we have multiple layers of authentication there. That is a nightmare now in the market.
Right.
You need to authenticate the user to use tools. You need to authenticate the user to use agents, right? This is now the security plane that you need also to integrate.
Yes. Yeah.
And this is extremely difficult because you have the manual one, right? A human accessing a database. And now you have an agent accessing a database through a tool on behalf of a human.
Exactly.
And this becomes more complex.
And it can cascade and create issues that we don't know of.
Of course. And when you say also about thousands of agents, imagine now an agent talking with another agent, with another agent, with another agent, and to propagate your user ID, your actions to all of them. What I see in the future also is this traceability across this whole interaction. Exactly.
And not just for us to make sure that we, the operations of our businesses don't fall over, but from a compliance and an audit perspective, right? And again, that's a bottleneck is the wrong word, but it's a point of friction. Like all of these businesses still require audit, require compliance.
Very true.
So traceability will be very important.
Yes, compliance at scale in that case, right?
Yeah.
And auditability. Oh, this is a nice project.
Exactly. This is like a whole. This is a whole new company idea. Anyone who wants to set up control planes and help organizations build and manage it can take this idea for free. But just learning from us in our experience, we exactly had what you were saying, Sokratis. Just as of 2 weeks ago, we added a new AI engine that was orchestrating between models. We added a set of new agents to work on top of existing agents in our product. The errors compounded when we got something wrong. So we had to trace back to 3 versions previously and restart again. That meant a lot of cost, a lot of time for my product team. We took the learnings, but we did not move an inch in terms of end customer value. So there may be scenarios where we are just learning to not repeat new failures for the future, but we would have lost a lot of cost and time. And I think it's inevitable for every organization who's kind of going into this journey. So just to summarize this, I think from an API and security planes are well known. API integration planes are the ability for organizations to talk to each other. Data planes are, let's say, planes that help us capture snapshots and metrics about an organization. But this AI control plane is very close to business.
Yes.
From what I hear. So Craig, who would you, if you were running a business, who would you trust to build and manage this AI control plane for you? Is it a business stakeholder? Is it a tech stakeholder?
Yeah. That's a very interesting question. So I mean, I guess it talks more broadly about like who owns AI as well in the organization. I think firstly, like this is foundational technology. So you can't be a control freak about trying to own it. And like I said earlier, it's activating in all teams. The balancing act that organizations need to get right is how do you manage all of this decentralized speed of adoption with centralized control? So who owns that centralized control in the control plane? I still think it is the task and the ownership of a CIO, of a technology leader, because it is a technology at the core of it. But when we talk about a CIO and even if it's a CAIO, this is a very different type of person now. These are commercially savvy, business outcome led, work back from the business to then deploy the right technology. They're there to think about creating enablement rather than creating centralized bottlenecks. So it's a different type of technology leader. And I'll add one more thing to this. There's this interesting pattern I'm seeing, and maybe the question that I can add to yours and I'll answer it myself is, who does this person report to?
Yes.
Right? Because this is a pattern we're seeing, which is increasingly these technology leaders are reporting into the business or the CIO.
Yeah.
We've seen one life science company that I work with and one bank both move their CIO to report directly into the chief commercial officer in the last 6 months. We've seen a very big life science company combine the role of their chief HR officer with the role of the CIO, single executive person, because they know the impact that this has not just on technology, but on people, and they want one person accountable. Does that answer your question?
Yes, of course. And I'm wondering now who's ready to take up such roles because
it's a very important role. And I think the last thing is as we see, it's essentially going to be like the operational spine of our businesses as well, a very critical operational spine. So it's an important role.
For sure. And bottom up, if you want, not from the C-level stakeholders. I think center of excellence are very important, right? Collaboration across different teams is very important. I mean, you cannot have anymore a platform team, let's say, leading everything and being the huge bottleneck with this speed. I have seen this with many, many customers.
Indeed.
They used to have one central team responsible building the standards, but why is that? Give the ability to all the others to start building standards, then assess all the standards, create something unified, but give different templates, if I may say, of teams, of structure, in order to innovate fast and to deliver fast as well.
Fully agree.
So might need to have multiple COEs, right? And
fully agree. And I think this is the other nuance, just from a technology angle on the control plane, is you need a technology that can integrate to an extreme diversity of different technology. Because we're seeing the agentification of SaaS,
Correct.
SAP, Salesforce, Service, now you name it, they all are activating agent layers as well. And so when we think about a control plane, it's not just something that can create agents and natively control agents in its own technology. It's a technology that can also interoperate across a diversity of other SaaS vendors as well. And that's very important.
Yeah,
indeed. That's critical. And what a conversation it's been so far. It's so enriching, firstly. And now let's just segue into the role of humans outside of the control plane strategy, build and maintenance to human in loop for end user business use cases. Okay. So let's say there is a control plane operational with standards, templates, everything integrated, but still it only drives uniformity. And a wise man previously told me that autonomy is probably more important or as important as uniformity. So maybe Sokratis, if you could share your views, how do you see human in the loop for end business use cases who are consuming such a control plane? And what would be your prescribed recommendations for those humans?
Okay, the control planes is what they give you standard boxes, right? The business units, they're responsible to fill the boxes with the use cases, right? I always used to say that I believe on a federated model, that the boxes are the standards, but all the responsibility and what a business unit will deliver is responsibility of the product owner, of the leader there. So for me, the human in the loop is extremely important, needs to be there. You need to have someone that is accountable to say, yes, I approve or reject what an agentic system delivered. This might be different layers as well. It might be the product owner, it might be the technical SME and leader to say, okay, I reviewed that. Yes, this makes sense. This is aligned. It might be also the person who has created the automation to see, is that aligned with the standard that we have given? So for me, human in the loop is there. It's not going to go away for sure. And it is necessary to be there all the time. But we need to work without creating bottlenecks, right? This federated model that I mentioned earlier is very, very important.
Yeah. I think the other thing on that as well is you need to wrap these business teams need to wrap so they need to leverage the empty box. I like the analogy.
Mm-hmm.
And they need to maybe decorate it with their business rules and logic as well. Because if they start to build agentic
shadow boxes
systems, they need to think not only about the control plane uniform rules and compliance and skills and guardrails, but also, I'll give you an example. If I'm a procurement officer and I'm building procurement agents to help me to manage how I secure vendors, send out RFPs, create new contracts, I can leverage the standard box from a control plane centrally, but I need to put down my specific guardrails around, am I comfortable with an agent making it up, spending more than 1,000 euros at a time on a contract? Is there a particular value that I'll guardrail it on? Am I comfortable with an agent signing more than 5 procurements vendors a day, right? Or like, do I want to limit it to a certain amount so I can make sure it doesn't impact the rest of my supply chain? So there are business rules and logic that has to be done in a decentralized business team on top of the control plane centralized logic as well.
100%. It is like you have the control plane, you inherit the basics, and then you augment them with your own rules. But you follow already the main rules.
The standard,
And by the way, this connects back to what we were saying earlier about the role of human intelligence. Because that procurement manager knows his business or her business, right? And adds their logic, their reasoning, their business construct and how they think about it to how the agent should operate within that environment as well.
Indeed.
We need many experts.
Yeah.
Yep.
Exactly. And that's what exactly I was thinking. And probably a follow-up here is we need experts for sure. What I also gathered was we need experts who have a niche for themselves, for say procurement or whatever.
Yeah.
So does that mean the experts who are trained on horizontal stacks today, do they need to be retrained for the future world? Or can we repurpose them towards these control plane actions? I'm just thinking now as a business leader who needs to move people around and give them training paths to be ready for the future. So the business experts, they clearly have a role. They'll consume agents. They'll do more for less for my business. What about the central functions, which are horizontal investments? Do I retrain them towards these control plane and whatever's required as human expertise around it? Or do I move them closer to business?
Do you want to go first?
This is a classic pendulum, I think.
Right?
So that, most of the times it happens to all the organizations. We go from verticals to horizontals and back to verticals.
It always happens.
Yes, I think a combination of the two is the sweet spot, right? You cannot have just verticals. Verticals are great, but to build the control plane, you need someone to know, the end-to-end thing.
Yeah.
So probably you will change the ratio, but you need both capabilities. What do you think?
I agree. And obviously, hey, this is AI, so we can't look more than 2 years out. Max,
100%.
right? We don't know what happens.
Exactly.
But I think what still holds, so totally right, it's a pendulum, comes and goes.
Yeah.
But also there's almost like a squads and tribes model here as well, because we need horizontal people to be able to build the control plane platforms, the semantic layer platforms, and to have a product mindset around how they build and operate and evolve those platforms. But we also need squads that can then leverage those platforms to deploy value into the business, right?
Yep.
And so I think that there is that dimension to it as well.
Yes.
And probably you can have the people that they know how to create these control planes to have a specific vertical as well.
Yeah.
For example, it's different to build a control plane for a bank than to build for telco, than to build for retailer.
True.
Yes.
So this might be the specialization of this horizontal layer.
Yeah.
That's very true. Yeah.
And these could be framings of that center of excellence point that you mentioned. Give that a very specific framing to say a control plane for a specific business unit in a bank. That's what this CEO is responsible for. Figure out the human coordination plus the agentic coordination. Within that group, teach us, and then we scale. Maybe test and scale.
But for me, the one thing to avoid, because it creates a bottleneck, is you need to separate out those who build the platform and then you get those who use the platform to create business value as well. Because if that's a single team, you create a monolithic bottleneck, essentially. Right? So,
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Back to the older problems of not creating the same organizational friction. But I think the bigger takeaway for me is we're not looking at a world where there are autonomous agents replacing humans at scale. Of course, there are expertise that need to be retrained and reallocated. And organizations will do more for a lot less. or more for the same number of human headcount today. But clearly, we don't see a world where, the human headcount is laid off by big proportions and its agents taking over. Or have I mischaracterized this based on what we just discussed?
No, and if you look at, it's hard to see, what data is fully reliable in the media right now. But if anything, some of the latest data is actually showing an uptick in hiring. Because we're seeing that, and I made the point earlier, if we just look at software engineering, suddenly like a real awakening that we can do so much more, but we still need humans to help us leverage the AI to do this. So this is actually, at least for now, actually going up, not down. We were talking about it earlier before we started rolling. I'm a firm believer that this is not a zero-sum game. This is an exponential pie. And we know that GDP is going to go up, a couple of percentage points in the next couple of years because of AI. With that will become a huger opportunity. So the aperture for like work for both people and AI is going to increase. We shouldn't limit ourselves to thinking about there's only a certain amount of work and that's forever set in stone that we're doing today. And therefore we're all fighting over the same work. This is going to grow significantly. And so as we see greater economical growth, that'll create, much more opportunity for both humans and AI. So I'm bullish. I don't see mass layoffs.
Same here. The only point that I want to raise is people, they need to get educated.
Yes.
Right? I see in larger organizations, people, they don't like to go into the AI world, even use AI as an assistant. That is, the easiest way. I think they need to educate themselves to understand what is that. It's like the Industrial Revolution, right?
Yeah.
They didn't know what was that, and everybody was scared. It is the same thing here. Many people, they don't know how to use it. Probably the adoption in big companies is around 5% of AI, I have seen, right?
Mm-hmm.
Why is that? It needs to be the 95%, and then they will realize that AI is a friend to deliver faster, right? Not only, but to work together, create new ideas, etc., etc., etc.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
And in the future, probably it might get automated. We might automate most of the stuff with agents, but still, we need someone to create the automation, right?
Yeah. So we have a wave of work we have to get through the next couple of years to drive that. But you're totally right. Those who do not embrace are the ones at greatest risk.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And this is an important takeaway for leaders who are thinking about significant reduction in headcount, that you still need to probably retain enough expertise to manage this change towards this new world. Yes. And then probably you'll figure out that you can do a lot more for the same headcount, which means this case for these reductions absolutely go away.
Yeah.
So maybe let's move towards a close and have specific ideas of these control plane investments. I'll just raise two questions for both of you. Feel free to pick up. Is an AI control plane about making my organization AI tool agnostic and AI model agnostic? Do you agree to this statement or disagree?
So let me just make sure. So is an AI control about making AI tool agnostic and AI model agnostic? Yes, model agnostic. I think you need to have a multi-model approach, because we spoke about it earlier. Different models for different use cases. Some are more expensive, some are less. Some are more, well-versed in particular application versus others. So taking a multi-model approach, I think, is definitely required. Multi-tool perspective, yes, in terms of what we're embedding and deploying in the business, because business has diversity. From a control technology perspective, I think you have to think more about a uniform technology on the control plane.
Yes, but also it depends on the maturity of a business, right? Probably an enterprise level business, you need to have the availability to all the different tools, all the different models, etc. If you start your journey, you need to start with whatever model you feel more familiar, you feel like you can use it, you feel like it can solve your problem. After you reach a certain level of maturity, then you will start thinking, adding more and more capabilities. Otherwise, if you start right now and give all the models, all the capabilities, all the tools to a business, it will be like you're in the middle of the ocean and you try to swim, right?
I really agree. Such a good point. And in fact, there's a balancing act even as you mature, because even as you become more mature, you don't want to completely open the floodgates, because you still want to, as an organization, create core capabilities and competencies in certain technology, because that'll help you to scale. And so if you fragment too much, then you have 1,000 experts in 1,000 different tools, but nobody who can actually help you to drive scale and volume as well.
Exactly. So yes, give the ability for everybody to, based on the outcome that you said, right? We need to improve to increase the outcomes. Give to the people the tools that they prefer, but also keep, the control in a certain level. And also on these, standards are very important. Protocols are very important. MCP, A2A, and all these protocols, the fundamental protocols are extremely important.
Correct.
So a mature organization is not an organization that just uses one technology, but it's also not an organization that uses a million technologies.
Mm-hmm.
Somewhere in the middle.
Yep, exactly.
And the key takeaway is, you may not want to standardize on a tool or a model, but at least standardize on an orchestration platform or a stack.
Yep.
Standardize on standards, standardize on skills. So there's a lot of standardization within this, but clearly don't make your business dependent, or as I say in my customer meetings, don't rent your business away to model providers, because if they increase their prices, you will come under a state of shock because your unit economics will go up.
I'll say one more thing about the controlling, because control can sometimes sound like an ugly word. And like for a business user, it's like, oh, you're going to control me. But it's both control and also enablement. And what I mean by that is, yes, it's, the allocation of standards, observability, all of these things to make sure that you're operating within the right uniform best practice. But we spoke about it earlier. It should also be a place where you can leverage skills, where you can leverage base templates and things like that accelerate how you drive value faster into your business as well.
Yeah.
And that's an important psychological piece. If I'm in a business, there's always a way around a central organization. I can always create shadow AI if I'm intent enough. But if there is a control plane that not only helps me to do something in a very secure and proper way, but also helps me to move faster because there's accelerators in there, then I'm inclined to use it more as well.
Indeed. And that takes me to the last question, which is probably summarizing whatever I captured. Is AI control plane an opportunity to introduce a new refreshing mission to the human experts in our teams?
You go for it. I'm always passing the hard questions to Sokratis.
This is my role, ladies. So I think, first of all, Greg talked about standards, right? You need to standardize everything. I can tell you that the 95% of AI has not been standardized so far. So I think you need people that they need to focus on this and start standardizing. Probably because market is not there yet. Standardize based on your needs, standardize based on your company, standardize based on your culture, standardize based on this, and then start incorporating new standards as they go along from the market. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. And so I was just thinking about your question as well. So is this a way to drive a paradigm shift for an organization? Yeah, it is. And what's the counterfactual on this? A world where an organization rapidly adopts AI in a very diverse way without any uniformity, which introduces a world of fractured business operations, a world of risk, a world of proliferation of cost and security issues. Right.
Compounded at that. So this is something that all organizations need to approach and start to adopt. To drive, it comes back to, I think, where we started, acceleration in business value in a very autonomous way across everything, but with uniformity as well. Because those that don't get that balance right will not be able to scale sustainably. Right.
Probably an idea that came now to my mind is, imagine now to have, you need a control plane, but you need also sandbox, you need innovations, right?
Yeah.
Imagine now to have vertical R&D departments to do innovation for you based on AI and start creating new standards just for your own business unit.
Right.
That would be amazing, right? Because now the R&D is just, I focus only on...
It's a fluid,
exactly.
Central thing.
And this can help you also to improve your control plane later on.
Yeah. I think you touched on a very interesting point here, which we probably need another hour to talk about, which is this is not just about automating existing processes and silos and controlling those. It's about process reinvention. It's about reinventing how value flows through the organizations. And that's, I think there are models we haven't even yet thought of. I love the idea of a vertical R&D model, right? And you might have to build on that by having an orchestration R&D function that orchestrates all of this R&D across the organization as well. But I think we're going to see different models emerge in our organizations with this as well.
For sure. We have started seeing that in software engineering.
Right.
The software development life cycle has changed completely, right? Why not the actual operation life cycle?
Yeah, indeed. When you're closer to business, the business recognizes you more for business value than a central layer that you were previously associated with, which could be IT operations, which was clearly a cost for a business. But now if you're part of this change, you're driving revenue, top line for a business, which means I value that investment and those colleagues are slightly higher than central investments. But this was a phenomenal conversation. We are right at the end. But thank you so much, Craig and Sokratis. I just lost track of time, to be honest. And I wish we had another hour to again discuss, and probably we could have written a book out of this.
You know what that means? You have to get us back again, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Why not?
Absolutely. But again, thank you so much for coming. Do you want to do a plug for your book?
Oh, yes. Together with my colleague Heiko Hotz, we're finalizing our book with O'Reilly around live voice agents. And we go through end to end. That means that somebody can learn what is an agent, what are the fundamentals, what are the key frameworks, what are the key interoperability ways like A2A and MCP, and how you can productionize that with a very secure way that is very unique, because right now everybody's talking about text-based agents. We are talking now about audio and video agents and how you can do that real time. So I will keep you informed when this will be out. And of course, I will give you a copy.
Look forward to that.
Look forward to it. Yeah.
Very cool. Thank you.